All right.
All right.
We are recording.
Woo! Recording.
Yeah. Exciting.
It is exciting.
Yeah.
What are we recording?
Welcome to AT Banter, the podcast where we discuss anything and everything regarding the world of assistive technology. With our hosts, Steve Barkley, Rob Minot, and Ryan Fleury. Now, let's banter.
So, welcome to this week's episode of AT Banter. I'm Ryan
Banter.
Fleury. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you got to get that banter in there.
Rewind.
Yeah. Something seems different today, Ryan.
What's different today?
I don't know. There's this strange empty space to my left.
To your left.
Yeah.
Well, that would be where Rob used to sit.
Really? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I guess we fired Rob, didn't we?
Oh, okay.
Well, he was sort of taking over.
Well, that's true.
He was like the main host dude.
Yeah.
And
it was going to his head.
We got to spread it around.
That's true.
We can't have his ego all puffed up like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we kicked him to the curb this week.
We did.
Yeah. Actually, Rob is off helping Rick Chant move a whole bunch of equipment and stuff out of storage and into Rick's house, I guess.
Into Rick's storage.
Into Rick's storage, yeah. So Rob's not with us this week.
Nope. Yeah. Just the two of us.
We can make it if we try.
Just the two of us.
Oh, sure. Change key on me. So, Ryan.
Rob.
Nope. Strike one.
See, that's why we got to get rid of Rob more often. It's just a go-to. Do that again.
Ryan.
Steve.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good. Steve.
Yes.
Who are we talking to today?
Well, today we are talking to Nancy Willard. She is the director of Embrace Civility in the Digital Age. She's the author of Cyberbullying and Cyber Threats, Responding to the Challenge of Online Social Cruelty Threats and Distress. That's a paper written in 2007 and available for purchase and download at Research Press. She's also the author of Cyber Safe Kids, Cyber Savvy Teens, Helping Young People Use the Internet Safely and Responsibly from 2007. That's at Jossie Base. And then Cyber Savvy, Embracing Digital Safety and Civility 2011 at Corwin Press. So she writes a lot of stuff about cyberbullying.
Yeah, and that's a mouthful, so I think we'll link to all that in the show notes.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I think she could help us really get our cyberbullying game on,
I
really
think so.
Step it up a notch.
Yep, and I think, with some of this, the shows on Netflix, what was that, 13 Ways to Die, I think, was the show.
Yeah.
Talking about, teenage suicide. You had mentioned before having somebody on to talk about this topic, so I think there's people out there who will get something out of it.
Yeah, I think so.
Should be a good show.
And, anybody who has kids is probably, struggling with how much access to give them to the online world, how much they should be monitored. And, she could probably talk to us about that too.
Yep. How much screen time is too much?
Yep.
Hello, Nancy.
Hi there.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, guys. What are we going to talk about today?
Well, mostly we're going to talk about you, I think.
That's right.
Yeah. That's the plan. And maybe we can start by giving us an idea about Embrace Civility in the Digital Age and what you do there.
Okay. Well, I'll start a little bit with the fact that I sort of embody the phrase, not all those who wander are lost, although we may appear to be so from time to time, or to look in that manner. I have a bachelor's degree in elementary and early childhood education from University of Utah, master's degree in special education from University of Oregon. I taught in special ed classrooms primarily with kids who have behavior challenges, burnt out and went to law school. When I became an attorney, I just sort of happened to get into the area of working with computer companies This was in the 80s when we were dealing with 5-inch floppies. That then led me to get asked back into schools to talk about what was happening with this new fangled technology coming into schools. And then I started to hear rumors about this thing called DARPANet. And then our county was actually one of the first ones, the county education program was one of the first ones who had a contract with to get internet access for students. This was before the web. This is when they were using email, Usenet groups, and Gopher. And so I immediately saw the potential for this from an education perspective and got involved with that, helped do some of the writing to encourage the development of the Oregon Public Education Network. And then as schools and students were getting onto the internet, and there just became a huge concern about digital safety. And since I had the background in working with youth at risk and law, I started focusing in that area. In 2007, I wrote and had published the first book that's ever been published in the world on cyberbullying. It was published by Research Press. And it was called Cyberbullying and Cyber Threats. And at that time, I realized that what educators were being told about bullying, about those who engage in bullying, which is largely at-risk, marginalized, aggressive kids, did not match the young people who I saw engaging in cyberbullying, also didn't match those who bullied me in the 60s. And the approach that schools were being told to use, which is make rules against bullying, have staff supervise, tell students to report, and then investigate and impose consequences. And I'm going, yeah, right. This isn't going to work. Schools aren't making rules for sites and apps. Adults aren't present. Students aren't going to report because they know adults are going to overreact and probably take away their access. Investigation is pretty hard for principals, and if they impose sanctions that lead to anger, then they've got the potential of uncontrollable digital retaliation. So what I realized was that what was happening online is merely a reflection of our relationships overall. So there's a need to stop distinguishing between online cyberbullying and bullying. It's hurtful behavior that's occurring in a variety of situations. Now, online can be, impulsivity seems to play a role. Desire for audience plays a role. And there can be greater harm, but it's the same harmful behavior. And so what we have to do is focus on embracing civility in the digital age. So that was a very long way of getting around to. The name of my program is Embrace Civility in the Digital Age. And the focus of my work is on trying to correct misunderstandings about those who engage in hurtful behavior, and helping, particularly helping schools is my primary focus, but how can we help? We have to shift away from the idea that adults have controls. I have a slide in my prevention program that says bullying prevention is not rocket science. It's far more complicated. Rockets generally do what they're told to do. And the same cannot be said for children, teens, and adults. So the focus of what I'm trying to do is really on empowerment, and empowerment with a focus on civility and inclusion. And so for young people, my focus is on how to help them reach out to be kind to those who are being left out or excluded, how to safely say stop, including how to talk with their friend who's being hurtful, how to help them understand that this isn't okay and how to remedy the harm, how to realize when something is serious and really does need to be reported, like the recent school shooting we had in Washington, where the kid handed out notes to his friends saying, yeah, I'm probably going to be dead or go to jail, and none of them reported. And we need to ask why that is. And then, so back to I've got 5 approaches: reach out, say stop, report concerns, stop, own it, and fix it. We always say, that we need to stop doing that. Well, how do we help young people decide not to be hurtful? And recognize that if they have been, what they need to do is accept personal responsibility and remedy the harm. And then lastly, given that, especially if you're different, you're likely going to be from time to time treated badly, but everybody gets treated badly from time to time. So how can we respond? How can we reduce the potential of being treated badly and increase the effectiveness of our response if we are? And then, especially in schools, we have to recognize that student perspective is that what schools are doing is not effective. When school staff witness these incidents, they do not respond in an effective manner. Only a minority of students report, and even after they do, things rarely get better. And the majority of students don't reach out for help, don't ask for help at school, or don't report when somebody gives them a note that says I'm going to be in jail or dead. That reflects a lack of trust that adults, they don't trust that adults are going to handle these situations effectively. So that's what I'm trying to work on.
So do you work mainly in the schools, you say, but we all know kids are sponges. Do you believe that some of this bullying behavior is learned behavior from what they see at home, and do you work with the parents as well?
Absolutely, it's learned behavior. It's not just learned from home. It's learned from home, it's learned from school, and it's learned from society. And right now we've got significantly increased concerns related to society. The research that I did, and I'll tell you why I know that this is learned and modeled behavior. I did a survey in 2015 of 1,500 middle school and high school students, and I asked them 4 questions about hurtful behavior. And I defined hurtful behavior very broadly, not the more, there's so many definitions for bullying, you can't, that's difficult. So I defined it pretty broadly. I asked them how frequently in the last month they had witnessed students being hurtful to another, had been hurtful, had somebody be hurtful to them, and how frequently they had witnessed school staff be hurtful. And then 42% of them said that they had witnessed school staff being hurtful.
Wow.
So then what I did was I looked at how those students who had ever, there were four choices: never, once or twice a month, once or twice a week, almost daily. So never was one category, ever was the other three. And I looked at the data on student hurtful behavior. And in those schools where students had witnessed school staff be hurtful, there was about double the amount. There was a significant, had a statistician do it for this, and a very significant 0.001 significance, that those students who had witnessed school staff be hurtful were far more likely to witness other students being hurtful, be hurtful, or have somebody be hurtful to them.
So in essence, there's a culture that leads towards more cyberbullying.
There is a perception that the social norms, either in the school, in the family, in the local community, or in our national community, or in the global community, if students witness adults being hurtful with no consequences, then they are much more inclined to be hurtful themselves. Period.
I'm from the same sort of school as you, I guess, when it comes to bullying. Ours back then was more physical and whispering campaigns. We didn't have the internet when I was in school.
Yes.
But you mentioned early on that there were differences between the people who were cyberbullies and the people who were physical bullies. What differences do you find in the physical type of bully versus the cyberbully?
Okay, so it's actually not the difference between the physical and cyber. There are two different profiles of people who engage in hurtful behavior. And those people are active both online and in school, in the communities, etc. So there are young people and adults who are marginalized and at significant risk. So these are young people generally who have experienced trauma and or are excluded, denigrated. They have challenges, and they are the at-risk students who are in our school. And we have pretty good ways of, that we're developing, especially with the increase in what's called trauma-informed care, recognizing that the source of this behavior is that these young people have or are experiencing either acute or chronic trauma or other adverse situations, and that is what is shaping and guiding leading to their hurtful behavior. The other profile is not well recognized, and that's a big, huge problem. The words that can be best applied to the primary source of bullying behavior are popular, socially skilled, competent, good athletes, attractive leaders. These are the students who are hurtful to each other to achieve social dominance. They're the preps. Hollywood's picked up on these young people.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely astounding and really not okay. On the stopbullying.gov website, okay, kind of the national authority, there's a description. It's in a PowerPoint on a training. It says, this is how children and youth who bully others are more likely to exhibit delinquent behaviors, dislike school, drop out of school, drink alcohol and smoke, hold beliefs supportive of violence, bring weapons to school, think of suicide and attempt suicide. Okay, that's your at-risk population. That is not the primary source of bullying in your school. So I'll tell a story. There was an incident that occurred in our community, and there was a young girl. She was a high school senior who was being bullied, and I met with her. And this young lady, beautiful young lady, intelligent, definitely is going to go some places, slightly overweight, okay? Well, she almost died as a 4-year-old because she has type 1 diabetes. And in the school that she had left the school that she was in and gone to another one because of constant bullying. Every year, she told me every year she had applied to be in a leadership class that the assistant principal / athletic director always put together. And she never got selected. She clearly has leadership skills. Never got selected for this class. The students who got selected were the socially skilled, popular, athletic students who were the ones who had bullied her throughout her school time. So that's where we've got problems. We also have problems in schools. A lot of schools use what are called token reward systems. So they've got green, red, yellow card board, or they give kids rewards. They catch them being good. They give them rewards, and then the kids who get the rewards get to go on fun trips or get to, have treats at the school, et cetera, et cetera. Well, the students who are being rewarded, this models relational aggression. This whole approach to behavior management models relational aggression, because the students who have social skills are being rewarded. The students who have experienced trauma and have challenges are the ones who aren't being rewarded. And so what the educators are doing is essentially communicating to those students who have the skills that they are superior and privileged and entitled to look down their noses at other students because the staff is doing that. Oh, and let me add something else, because you're going to hear, we have heard this, and you're going to hear it frequently. When there's a concept called moral disengagement. We all have values, a set of values that we formulate as we're growing up, and those values seek to guide our behavior. If we act out of accord with that behavior, it's what we do is we tend to create rationalizations for that misbehavior, and that helps us think. That helps us to say, well, it really isn't outside my values. So there are 4 key rationalizations. Number 1 is spinning it. Euphemistic terms like, oh, it's just locker room talk, or it's a prank. Another is denying personal responsibility. Someone else started it. I'm not responsible. This happens all the time. The third is denying the extent of the harm. He or she's overreacting. It wasn't that bad. And the fourth is blaming the one who's been victimized. If only she would stop, or she deserved it. So we hear those rationalizations very frequently. Look at some of the communications from the leader of our country.
I was going to mention that.
You can find them. You get evidence of that. But school staff will rationalize. It was just a prank, especially if it's one of the socially dominant, competent leadership students and a student who's treated badly by that student. It's very difficult for the principal to, hold that student accountable, because they generally have powerful parents who are going to come down on the principal. Okay, so the principal will say, well, it was just a prank. It really doesn't meet our definition of bullying. You're really overreacting. And if you'd only stop XYZ, then this wouldn't happen. So we hear from principals. Obviously, we hear it from young people. We also can hear it from, a lot of times students really do want to step in and help, but they don't have the skills, or they're afraid. And so if you really want to step in and help and you don't, then the failure to do so is also out of accord with your values. And so if you want to step in and help and don't, you will also then rationalize, well, somebody else should have, somebody else should have helped. It wasn't that bad. And so we see those rationalizations everywhere. And I think that if we start calling attention to the fact that people are rationalizing hurtful behavior, then we might be able to get it under control.
So, over the years, the internet has changed and evolved, and now we have, my daughter is in grade 12 this year. She's part of the drama club, which is sort of a subset, not the popular kids. They're the
right.
The emotional, the very emotional crowd. But
right.
she has these massive online networks of friends on multiple platforms.
Right.
When kids have these kind of networks and they're that exposed, does that make a difference in terms of those interactions that they're going to have with the bullies?
First of all, I strive never to call somebody a bully, because bully implies it's kind of name calling. It implies a status that can't be changed. So if we instead refer to somebody's behavior, somebody is engaging in hurtful behavior, then that holds the promise that this person can recognize that this was inappropriate and take steps to remedy the harm. The very important, that's why I'm so focused on the fact that we've got to empower young people to know how to effectively foster positive relations in these environments, because you're certainly not checking on all of her communications in all of these multiple platforms that she's involved in. If you tried to,
I don't imagine that would go well.
Yeah, she would say, well, maybe she wouldn't use an expletive, but
she would
easily figure out how to set up a situation where you wouldn't be able to see what she's doing. Okay, we have to really focus, and schools just absolutely have to shift from this idea that they have control over to the idea that we have to provide autonomy to young people. We have to help them gain effective skills. Like, we have to help them work with their peers to say, hey, we care about the majority of young people really want to have positive relations. They don't like to see people being hurtful. These people can achieve social dominance, but it's only because there's a misunderstanding of the actual social norms. The actual social norms of young people are, especially of young people, are very accepting. And they don't want to see people be hurtful. If you look at the data, specifically the data on the acceptance of different gender orientations and identity, the surveys that I've seen go down to young adults, and the overwhelming majority of young adults have no problem with the fact that you might have a different orientation or identity. Vast majority. It's the old folks who we get problems with. And I think that also is the case with just about every other difference that you would want to put out there. I think that young people are much more accepting of different races, different religions, different skills. I think as a generation, we should be proud of them. And in fact, the communications that they're having digitally are breaking down a lot of those barriers. When you're not, when you're communicating with so many people, whether or not they are of a certain status is of less importance than what you're talking about, what their ideas are. So there's a lot of positive, and I think actually a lot of the positive attitudes towards those who might be, quote, different, close quote, have come about because of the connectivity of the internet. Oh, by the way, I was going to say something. We see both kinds of hurtful behavior, both the marginalized, the at-risk, as well as those who are being hurtful to achieve dominance. We see both kinds online. The marginalized at-risk are generally considered trolls. They're the really challenging folks to deal with if you get trolls on you. But then there's also, especially among young people and within those groups, there's the efforts to achieve dominance that are occurring. So young people have to know how to respond if somebody is hurtful to them. And one of the most important things, especially when it's digital technology, and I think everybody has from time to time violated this, is if you're really angry, keep your hands off the keyboard.
And definitely don't drink wine at the same time.
Yeah. The whole concern of impulsive behavior, and I have been there, done that. Rage of anger. I'm going to tell you what I think about you. And then needing to go back and remedy the harm. But yeah, that impulsivity is a challenge. More and more schools are now implementing mindfulness practices, which can really be helpful in controlling the impulsive behavior. And helpful for all of us.
Does it make it more difficult now that it is so easy to hide your tracks if you're going to engage in those kind of behaviors? If you want to be completely anonymous, you can pull it off fairly effectively now. Do you find people hiding and engaging in these sorts of behaviors often, or are people generally just straight up about it?
I think it doesn't occur as much within the friendship groups of young people. Because, quite frankly, if somebody tries to do something anonymous, somebody else is going to know who it is, and the word's going to get out. And, so it's actually, technically it's hard, but when you've got ongoing social relationships with people, somebody's going to figure it out. Somebody's going to squeal, and that's going to be taken care of. There was an interesting situation that emerged in Salem, Oregon, over the summer. Some enterprising middle school students set up a very raunchy Instagram account and were doing a lot of highly inappropriate sexual harassment of female students at a middle school. And as best I could tell, because the reporter called me for comment and stuff like that, and what the reporter indicated was that there were a lot of students who had gotten onto that Instagram account and were telling whoever was behind it in no uncertain terms it was entirely inappropriate. And very rapidly, the Instagram vanished, which means that some of the students saw it, filed a report, said, hey, take this down. It was quite appropriate. And some of them told adults who predictably came hugely concerned. We're calling the police. We're trying to get a hold of the principal at the school, who was wisely on vacation and not responding to her phone or email. And so it was the adults who were coming unglued. The Instagram account came back up again, and went down even more rapidly. So as best I can tell, as someone who lived in another community and wasn't really, so my primary source was, or my only source was the reporter, the students had that under control. They were objecting. They had it taken down, not once, but twice. And also, I lay odds, this is going beyond what I know, but I lay odds a number of them know who did this. And the students who were behind it probably heard plenty about how inappropriate this was from the other students. So that's that's what we need to generate. That's the kind of response that we can expect from younger people, and we just have to make sure that they have the knowledge and skills to do that. Oh, I also heard of another, can't remember where this occurred, but a student who was treated badly online. And, one story I heard was a student who was treated badly online, and then the next day she came to school with a whole bunch of Post-it notes. And on those Post-it notes, she had written totally positive statements about people. And she went around the school putting Post-it notes on the lockers, on teachers' doors, essentially totally shifted this to a positive reaction. Her response was, yeah, somebody dissed me online. There's too much negativity in the world, so I'm going to do my best to create the positive. It became a phenomenon in her city of getting Post-it notes and leaving little Post-it thank you notes. So, these kind of wonderful, creative, turn it to the positive, respond effectively to the negative, but turn it to the positive is what we can empower young people and others to do.
Excellent. Yeah, that's an excellent story. Now we've mostly been talking about bullying behavior, but your paper also talks about distress, and again, my own experience, with a daughter in the drama club, is a lot of times what she's dealing with online is her friends having meltdowns for a variety of reasons, often relationship based or problems at home,
Right.
and these things she takes to heart, and it really bothers her. And I think that part of what bothers her is just not being able to see how she can affect positive change with her friends. So what kind of advice can you give to kids who are dealing with distress in the online community?
Or any community.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah, the program that I'm have completed and am about to launch for schools is called Embrace Civility. And there's information on my website. One section of Embrace Civility is on positive empowerment. And that's if somebody's being hurtful to you, or if you have any other kind of distress. So social science, there's a whole wonderful new field of social science that's called positive psychology, and also what's called trauma-informed care. There's some critically important things that young people can do to become more positively powerful. Number one is connections. So the fact that if somebody's distressed and they're reaching out to a friend, that's good. I'm here for you. I'm your friend. So connections both with helpful friends as well as trusted adults. And so the best thing we can do in schools elsewhere is to really help and make sure that people have positive connections. Okay. A second approach is really important. I've already talked about that, and that's the ability to self-regulate, to calm down, to remain calm. Yeah, I'm really upset. Okay, let's. If your brain is upset, you're not going to be able to figure things out. So you've got to achieve calmness. One of the best videos on mindfulness, it's called Just Breathe, and it's a group of kindergarten students explaining what happens in the brain when you get stressed and how they can calm themselves. So knowing how to engage in that kind of self-regulation. Problem-solving skills are exceptionally important. If something has happened, every young person needs to be able to go through a process and say, okay, how am I going to respond? So the basic way that problem-solving skills are is, okay, do I have a clear understanding of what happened? What do I understand what is my goal in this situation? What do I want to achieve? And then what are some strategies that I can use to achieve that goal? What are some things? And it's more than one strategy. You need at least three. And then considering those strategies and saying, okay, is each in accord with my values? And what might happen if I did that or this or the other thing? And then from that, figuring out what's the best strategy to try first, realizing the first strategy you try might not work. So you might have to then reconsider and say, well, maybe I'll try strategy 2, or I'll come up with a new strategy 4. And then you just keep trying the strategies. Now, if 2-3 times you try something, it's not working, then you probably ought to go talk to an adult or somebody who has a little better authority. But so this is a process that young people can go through by themselves, but it's better if they talk with their friends. Okay, here's my problem. What are some ways, and so you've got either 2 friends or a group who are saying, okay, well, why don't you try this? So that kind of problem solving. There's thankfulness, gratitude, paying it. Yeah, things are crappy a lot of times in a lot of lives, but there are things that are happening that are good. So focusing on the good things. And the research says if you just write down 3 things that happened every night you write down 3 good things that happened during the day, that helps. There's a dynamite site. It's the VIA Institute on Character, and their website is viacharacter.org. They have a survey on there that adults and teens can take. They have identified the 24 top character strengths, and you can go and figure out which are your top strengths. Everybody's got different strengths, so being able to identify what you're good at. And then if you're problem solving, it's like, well, I'm really good at this, so maybe I should have a strategy that relates to that. So I highly recommend their website, because it's a way of saying, hey, I'm proud of myself. These are the things I do well. Another strategy is focusing on your future. If you say, well, this is where I am going, and these are the steps that I'm going to be taking today, this week, to get to where I want to go. Another strategy is reaching out to be kind to others. So, and this is really helpful if you've got somebody who's being bullied or having some challenges. If they can turn that around and intentionally reach out to be kind to others. There was a study they did. They measured peer acceptance, and then they had one group of students who they said, okay, what you want you to do is be kind to 3 other people, preferably ones you don't know outside your social group, someone who seems distressed. Be kind to 3 people each day. And then they measured peer acceptance. And the kids who reached out to be kind, their level of peer acceptance went way up. Well, I mean, that's a pretty cool trick. If I reach out to be kind to 3 other people, or maybe 5, then people are going to be kind to me. So the whole kindness aspect is just really, really important. Too often we allow others, we give other people power to control how we feel about ourselves. And we got to stop doing that. The fact that somebody treats you badly, if you allow yourself to, it's a combination of both the bad things that have happened and your choice or your decisions, or you're thinking about yourself, that end up with the bad consequences. This is called rational emotive therapy. So if you can change how you respond and keep your own personal power, then you can change the outcome. So if somebody is hurtful to me, my choice is to say, hey, I'm not going to give you the power to control how I feel about myself. I'm going to keep my personal power. And so I keep trying this. I have a young daughter. She's in her early 20s. So did this. I'm so upset. It's like, look, okay, these things happen. You can't control how somebody's going to treat you, or you can't control what's going to happen. You can control how you respond. You can control how you feel about yourself. Don't give somebody else the power to control what you're going to think about yourself. So those are all of the strategies that I've incorporated into the Embrace Civility program.
Where do you fall on the spectrum of allowing your kids access to the online world? Like, did you supervise them to any extent? I've always been of the opinion that my kids needed to learn media skills. And they need to understand the online world. They need to understand to think critically. and to deal with it responsibly. Other parents are on the polar opposite, like, no, my kid is not getting on that iPad, period, forget it. No, they stay off of the internet until they're 20. Do you have any guidelines that you would offer parents that are struggling with that, finding the balance there?
Yeah, well, if you're asking based on experience, realize that my children are in their 20s, which means my experience raising them was very different than the experience of parents at this point in time.
Right.
So, talk about rapidly changing. The best advice, I just saw some research that indicated that, if you give younger kids cell phones, then they're going to get cyberbullied, and it's merely the fact that they've got this better technology. When internet first started coming out, the solution, it was funny. The solution was going to be filtering software. And for a long time, it was like, we're gonna control this with filtering software. There was actually a congressional committee, Internet Safety Task Force, I think it was, that was set up to deal with the concerns of the internet coming into school, and kids are going to access porn, and predators are going to prey on them, et cetera, et cetera. And the whole answer that was being provided was filtering software. I was asked to testify for this commission, and there were so many snake oil salesmen, techie guys there whose filtering solution was going to solve the problem. I took along Dr. Seuss, Oh, the Places You'll Go, wherein it states, you'll look up and down the streets, look them over with care. About some you will say, I don't choose to go there. With your head full of brains and your shoes full of feet, you're too smart to go down any not so good streets. So I actually read to the commission from Dr. Seuss.
That's awesome.
Anyway, held it up proper kindergarten style. See the pretty pictures? Anyway, so this has to be, kids aren't supposed to be on Facebook until they're 13. Okay, in part that's because of a statute related to marketing. But this has to be developmentally appropriate, and as you're expanding access, you've got to be talking. You've got to make sure that your kids know how to self-regulate, not respond if they're upset. And you have to make sure they know how to problem solve. So that's a lot of questions. And it's not the adult control, I'm going to control this, blah, blah, blah. It's not going to be effective. So self-regulation and problem solving are the top skills. And that doesn't mean adults solving the problem for them. That means, hey, I just saw this. What do you think I should do? Or this just happened to me. Okay, well, let's discuss this. What do you think you should do? What are your goals? What are the strategies? So going through that problem-solving strategy that I went through. The other thing that I think is very helpful is focusing on the positive. Young people often don't share what's happening that is of concern because they're afraid that the adult is going to overreact and take away their digital access. So positively commenting on anytime a young person shares something that's happening online. You want to focus on the positive. So the kid says, hey, thus and such happened. Oh, tell me more. Wow, you had a really, that was a great response. I'm so glad you're using the technology so responsibly. That was a really smart way to respond. So if you can focus on the positive And that will then encourage young people to share if something negative has happened, and that's what we want to be able to do. So every time your kid says anything about online, it's pay attention and be positive. And then if it's negative, it's not. If there's a problem, it's not taking away their agency. It's helping them figure out how to problem solve to resolve the situation. And then positively acknowledging when they have.
Okay, so how do we apply this to Trump's Twitter feed?
See, fortunately, we're up here in Canada, so we have a distance from him, so we can just stand back and laugh. But
I know. Well, first of all, what we're going to see here in the United States, especially, but I'm not sure how much this is migrating in other areas. And I actually wrote to communication person at a school district, said, we're going to see the rates of bullying go up. They do annual surveys, biannual surveys. The rates are going to be higher. This is not because of the failure of schools. This is because of what's happening in society. The one strategy is to focus on things that happen as a teachable moment. Lots of teachable moments about how people rationalize hurtful behavior. It was a joke, it's just meant to be funny. I think that was the response to the GIF of him hitting a golf ball into Hillary Clinton's back. Anyway, so there's a lot of opportunity to understand rationalizations and to make positive choices, even when the leadership does not appear to be headed in that direction. So what we're seeing is actually a fair amount of grassroots movement in a very positive direction down here. Not fast enough, but on the other hand, we really are seeing a lot of grassroots coming together. And that's what we're going to be the path to survive until Mr. Mueller gets his work completed, which is going to take a while.
Yeah, do you think, is what we're seeing on the national stage the same sort of thing that plays out on the smaller stage in the schools, where if you have somebody who's a leader in there, if they, I think you said it earlier, if they bully, you end up with that culture of bullying, and now we're seeing that happening on the grander scale.
Yes, but we also saw that happening with the Democrats within the Democratic National Committee. Mm-hmm. Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So this is a bipartisan opportunity to evaluate. The only slight psychological glitch, yes, this is a person who has a high degree of power, also has some clear psychological challenges, which is not always the case with the ones who are seeking social dominance, being hurtful to achieve social dominance. And the marginalized, at-risk youth who often end up in prison, there may be some prison in the future, in this case. So there's a little bit of bridging of the behavior there, but there's a lot of teachable lessons, teachable moment lessons about the abuse of power, and hurtful behavior, and the need to come together at a family, school, community level to address those concerns. One way of looking at this is that we've had concerns of the abuse of power and status this isn't just new for this current president. We have abuse of power and status. And if you've got an infection, you have to bring it to the surface in order to be able to deal with it. And so perhaps what the path that our country has followed has been to bring that infection to the surface so we can more fully understand what the problems are and then be more effectively able to deal with them.
There's been a lot of good information.
Yeah, this got real deep real fast.
Yeah. Oh, well, Nancy, we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today and share your knowledge. Like I said, we'll definitely have to have you back to dig even deeper.
Thank you very much.
And you want to share with our audience where people can find more information about you?
I am at embracecivility.org. And the program I have to offer is coincidentally named Embrace Civility. So if you look on my homepage, it's the first link off of that homepage. And the resources are all there. I've hope they may have connections with schools. I really am interested in working with schools to see what we can do to help create positive school climate that fosters positive relations and inclusivity and embraces civility.
We will definitely link to your website in our show notes as well.
Great. Thank you so much.
Well, we wish you all the best with your mission. It's an important one. Certainly the world could use a lot more civility these days.
Yes. Thank you very much. And great questions, guys. It's a delight to be here.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You take care. Mm-hmm. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, it's deep, eh?
Yeah.
It's a lot of information.
Indeed. And initially when we were talking about this guest, we were fully focused around the idea of bullying. Mm-hmm. And that's really not what you need to focus on.
No.
It's
the civility.
It's the civility, the positive aspects. So we got schooled here, man.
We did indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So more positive affirmations in our world. All of us.
Yes.
All of us. All you AT Banter listeners out there, go out and say something nice about somebody.
Exactly.
Maybe three times a day.
At least 3 times.
At least 3 times a day. We will turn you into a civility army.
And if that's too much, try once a week. Just try something once, and it'll spread.
Yeah. Hey, Ryan.
Steve.
I really like what you've done here with the microphones.
What's that?
This whole setup. Yeah, it's great, man. You've done a fantastic job.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're most welcome.
All right. So where can people find us?
Well, people can find us all over the place. I mean, we've got a webpage, we've got email, we've got Twitter, Facebook, YouTube.
Yep.
I always forget YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if they want to email us, they can email us at atbanterpodcast@gmail.com.
Yep. Or they can find us online at www.atbanter.com.
Yeah.
Send us an email, send us a tweet, send us a like on Facebook.
Tell us something nice. Embrace civility, man.
We'd love to hear from you.
All righty.
All right.
So we're going to wrap this thing up?
Let's wrap it up.
All right. Well, I'm not Rob Minot.
And I'm still Ryan Fleury.
That would make me Steve Barkley then.
And we'll see you next time.
I guess so.
Bye-bye.
It's so much less professional with Rob not here.
It is, but oh well. Hit stop.
All right.
I gotta pee.
This podcast has been brought to you by Canadian Assistive Technology, providing low vision and blindness solutions across Canada. Find us online at www.canasstech.com. That's CANASSTECH.com. Or call us toll free at 1-844-795-8324. For all your assistive technology servicing needs, call Chaos Technical Services at 778-847-6840 or find them online at chaostechnicalservices.com. Music provided by bensound.com.